Hello everyone and welcome back to the Calm Cast. Normally I would say we're back with, a brand new episode, brand new guest, or whichever way I actually say it. I flip-flop sometimes, I feel. We're actually just here with me, with your host, Carys Mullins. Because for those of you who do not know, this month, September of 2022, and all Septembers hereafter and all Septembers before, is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, or just National Suicide Prevention Month. People say it different ways, and so will I. So the nature of today is me just sort of sharing my personal story with you all of my mental health journey and the low points of that and how I was able to come out of it. And I hope that sharing such a personal story can inspire you guys to come out and share your stories as well. And if you want to do that, you can always message me. You can always email me at carys.m.mullins@gmail.com, or you can also, that's my personal email, but you can also just go to www.thecalmblog.com/podcast and go ahead and check that out, because there'll be a form there. And if you want to share your story, we're a platform for that, and we can give you this space. So without further ado, with further ado, I want to say that if you are struggling, remember to call 988, which is the National Suicide Hotline for the United States. It's relatively new. It's not that long digit number anymore. It's just 988. But if you're in immediate crisis, please call 911, because I'll be able to get fast help to you, fast emergency help, fast medical help to you as soon as possible. And there's no shame in doing either of those things. So just remember to take care of yourself. And if you feel like this episode might not be a safe episode for you, because I am going to get into sort of more nitty-gritties of my personal story than I have in the past, don't feel bad. So just click off, go listen to something happy, go watch something happy, go watch a true crime, or listen to a true crime go watch a podcast. What am I, 50? I feel like that's a little rude. Okay, what am I, 90? That's better. I feel like nobody who's like 90 is going to be listening and or watching this, which, by the way, you guys can watch this on YouTube. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can just listen to the podcast and not look at my face. Either way is cool with me. So without further ado, let's get started. I feel like in middle school, that was sort of like the turning point for a lot of things. Because elementary school, it was fine. I've had like quarrels with friends and things like that, but it was pretty normal. Everything about it was sort of just standard. 6th grade was pretty much the same too, but the shift happened between 6th and 7th grade, and I honestly can't tell you why to this day that shift happened. I don't really know. It just sort of was a gradual sort of decline in the vibes over the summer between 6th and 7th grade. And 7th grade, I feel like it could have been because of puberty. I mean, I was kind of just this like absolute child in the 6th grade, and then in 7th grade, I started to get really bad acne, like really bad cystic acne, which led to bullying, so that could have been a factor. It could have been weight changes. It could have been really anything that, happens to you during puberty. It sort of just set something off in my mind and apparently gave people around me fuel to bully me, which I realize now just meant that they were insecure, but that's not the point. The point is, when I was in 7th grade, I did not realize that. I didn't realize sort of how it wasn't really about me, and how the bullying wasn't really, I blamed myself for it. I was like, oh, well, there must be something wrong with me if people are finding things wrong with me. It's like, no, you could literally be the most perfect human being and people are going to find things to say about you. So that's all that. But I didn't realize that in 7th grade. So I, had a really low self-esteem. I dealt with a lot of sort of, dark thoughts. I would isolate myself, but I was also very involved in school. So when I say isolate myself, I'm more meant like in the social aspect, but in terms of like responsibility and duty, not really. I was actually really involved in all of those things. I was in cheer. I was in sort of like an advanced program, and I was really into schoolwork, except for like one class, which I don't want to talk about, but I'm not good at math, and we'll just leave it at that. But my grades definitely weren't as good as they were in 6th grade, just because when you have poor mental health, your grades are going to suffer, and that's just how the ball rolls. So, I mean, okay, fair enough. I guess not every time, but most of the time something is, going to give. You can't have a mental illness that's like active and severe and not being treated and, get perfect grades and be perfect at your sport and have a perfect social life. It's just not possible. Something's going to give. And for me, that was sort of a little bit of my grades, but mostly just my social life. I didn't really have one. I sort of just dove into work. So that means like homework, because I obviously didn't have a job. I was in 7th grade. So, you know, I feel like all of that took a toll, but it was really just a lot of like depression, feeling bad about myself, socially isolating. And that was really just my 7th grade year, dealing with bullying and things like that. Things like that. Like, there's really nothing akin to bullying. But, and then you take the summer. I feel like, you know, these summers, this transference from like one grade to a next was really just my ultimate downfall. Like, really just like was not the vibes. It really said, oh, changing grades, changing brain. I don't even know. So after 7th grade, over that sort of summer between 7th and 8th grade, there was definitely like a big change in just my personality, the way that I acted, sort of this, you know, just a different person I really just became in the beginning of my 8th grade year. And I think it's because I didn't really reach out, you know. I sort of just let all of this fester, and sort of let the bullying fester, and let the depression fester, and the anxiety fester, and all of it sort of built up to where I wasn't, you know, like in 7th grade, you could say I was like the classical depressed person. I was like all emo clothes. I listened to My Chemical Romance. Like, I was a classic, you know, like Hollywood movie depressed person. And for me, you know, I was like, I don't know, it must have been some part of my brain that was just like, I'm done with you being like this. I want you to stop showing sort of these like signs of depression, the signs of anxiety, and I want you to do something with it. So instead of just like moping around, I was trying to like put my energy into something that made me feel more in control of these emotions that had sort of spiraled in the 7th grade. And some of you may be thinking, oh, okay, so you picked up a new hobby, or you did this, you joined a new sport, you made new friends. That's not what happened. I developed an eating disorder known as anorexia nervosa, which is essentially just this form of control. It's a mental illness that focuses on control, and that control can manifest in different ways. When you have an eating disorder, it can be, you know, binging, which is sort of like an out of control situation, purging, which is a control situation, restricting food intake, which is also a control situation. And I want to be very careful when I say, you know, control and not control, because when you have an eating disorder, there is absolutely no such thing as control. You are basically spiraled out. You don't have control. You have the illusion of it, but your brain is just so sick at that point that you have no such thing. You have no autonomy from your eating disorder, and you need treatment. There really is just no distinction. There's no exceptions to that rule. If you have an eating disorder, you have no control and you need help, and that's the end of that conversation. But obviously, I was in 8th grade. I didn't have the knowledge I had now. I didn't know any of that. So, as you would expect, things did not continue on very well. But in the beginning of, I just said something. But in the beginning of 8th grade, it just became this dark place for me. I mean, 7th grade was a dark place for me, but 8th grade, when I sort of said, okay, well, all of these outward feelings are, you know, showing them off, and you know, being that classical Hollywood like depressed person isn't doing me much good. It's not getting me what I want. And I don't know, this wasn't me talking, it was my eating disorder, so I can't really explain a lot of what was going through my head at the time. But it just was very frustrating. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't loneliness or helplessness, it was frustration, it was a lot of anger. And I would take that out on the people close to me, and I would take it out on those who were really just trying to show their concern and that they cared. And I guess one day it must have come to a pinnacle, because I remember I was just sitting in class, and I was so utterly exhausted. I was angry, I was sad, I had all of these emotions that I didn't know why I had them at the time. I knew I had them now, but at the time I didn't know, and I didn't know how to explain it. I felt like no one would understand me if I said something. I felt like there was really no way out of the situation. And so I had planned for that to be my last day at school. My last day as a person is what I'll just leave that at. And when I was walking home, I was walking home with a friend because we always walked home. We lived on the same street. And I don't know, it was just something different, I guess. It must have been off about me or something, but she just gave me this big old hug right before we split ways to go down our separate paths on the street. And I hugged her back or whatever, and I went home, and I was gonna do what I was gonna do, and then I just remembered how much, like, care and concern, and I don't know, just something about the hug that she gave me. And then when we sort of left off, I'm like, do I really want that to be, my last interaction? Like, is this fair to others? Is this fair to myself? Does this make sense? Is this really what I want? And I decided, no, it really wasn't what I wanted, and I stepped away. And somewhere in the back of my head is like, I'll do it tomorrow, but I never end up, I sort of just moved on and forgot about it. But that wasn't the end of my hardship, but it was a turning point. And it's something so simple as a gesture like that can really save someone's life, because it saved my life that day. And I can't explain it, but that little gesture showed that someone was waiting for me. It showed that someone looked forward to saying hello to me every day, and that people were also looking forward to getting to say goodbye to me every day, just to wake up the next day and say hello, and I didn't want to take that away from that person. And over time, as I was healing and as my journey continued, I realized I didn't want to take that away from myself either. So it was really, that's, a lot of people have these, or assume that there's this big story and there's this big turning point where people decide not to go through with a suicide attempt. But it wasn't really like that for me. It was something so simple. And I hope that is just a reminder to everyone listening or everyone watching that simple gestures of kindness, small acts of kindness, even if you don't know a person, can make all the difference in someone's life. It can, hey, you dropped this scent on the floor, or hey, you dropped your wallet back there, or hey, I like your shirt today, or, oh, I like that meal too, or whatever, small act of kindness you can give, just give it, because you never know what that person is going through, and it may just save someone's life. And I feel like I've explained the story from this point on, but so I'll go ahead and continue this rather vaguely, because it's a very hard topic. I mean, suicide is a very hard topic, but an eating disorder is a completely other form of a hard topic. For sufferers who may be watching and or listening, I'll just basically say that it was a downward spiral. I wasted away, and no matter how much I told myself that, this milestone is going to be when I stop, this day, this month, this accomplishment is going to be all I need. And it was never like that. It was, oh, I reached this accomplishment, what's the next one I can get? So if any of you are struggling with an eating disorder, just remember that nothing you do will ever be enough for your eating disorder. Nothing, absolutely nothing. You could literally become dust, and it would be like, dust still exists, because that's the end goal of an eating disorder. It does not want you to exist in this world. And don't let it take you away from yourself. Don't let it take you away from your family and your friends. If you have pets, don't let it take away from, I don't even care if you have a goldfish. That goldfish needs you, okay? Be there for your goldfish. That's my campaign slogan. Be there for your goldfish, okay? If you don't have a goldfish, go get a goldfish right now. That's all I'm saying. But my family was actually the one who ended up getting me help. I was a minor, obviously I was in middle school, and I went through a 3-month inpatient / it was really more like a residential facility, but I feel like inpatient, maybe people can visualize that better, where they taught me how to be a person again, and I found myself again. And I'm not gonna go through the whole story. I mean, it was 3 months. It's a very, very long story. We would be here for an hour. Nobody wants that. You all have things to do. But I mean, it saved my life. I mean, so there's 2 people I owe my life to. It's everyone at that residential facility, all the people who helped me there, and the friend who hugged me that day. So yeah, I did have a big gesture of like having to be away from my family for 3 months and live in a hospital, and that was saved my life, and that's a big example of a turning point. But also something so small as a hug or a wave or a handshake. If you're that kind of handshaky person, I'm not. Keep your hand away from me. Keep your crusty, dusty hand away from me. I don't know what's been there, which is funny because I'm okay with hugs, apparently. I don't know. Ignore that sentence. Or actually don't. It's a vibe sentence. But one thing I will say about being in residential is there was a point where I was trying so hard. I'd been there for like 2 months. I was working so hard, and I just felt like I was no closer to getting sort of the okay to leave and go home, and I missed home so much, and I felt like nothing I was doing was good enough for these people who were treating me. And that wasn't the truth. It was, they wanted me to get to a certain point in my recovery that they felt okay that if I had left, I'm not going to relapse. And at the time I didn't really understand that, but it makes a lot of sense because the relapse rate after you leave a residential facility like that, especially for eating disorders, is like less than a year most of the time. So they wanted to make sure that if they were going to send me out, they wanted to do it at the right time and with the right tools. And I guess I just wasn't there, so they wouldn't let me leave, and I wanted to leave, and I felt trapped, and I felt cornered, and I felt not disrespected, disregarded, that's the word, disregarded, and like they didn't care. And I would just cry all day because I wanted to go home so bad, and I sort of just lost my mind for a minute, to be honest. I just felt like I was the only person on this earth, and that nobody was looking out for me when that's actually all they were doing. But it felt like, since they weren't listening to my demands that I wanted to go home, that they didn't care, and that they were off-putting it, even though I know that's not what was happening. Which is interesting because the fact that I was thinking that way and that was my mindset just proved their point. But which is something I can look back on now and say, oh, they were right. But I won't go into details because details can be very triggering. But I did something I shouldn't have, and I caused harm to myself and was taken to the ER, and that was a very traumatic experience for me. I honestly still have difficulty talking about it. I was transferred from the ER to a psychiatric facility, which I want to make very clear, the residential place that I was in for my eating disorder was not necessarily a psychiatric facility. This one was. This was a real psychiatric facility with people who were just not themselves. People I don't know how to say it. It was like all of them were sort of in their own little world. I mean, we're a group of people all trying, in the same place, in the same day room, and having the same meals together, talking to the same therapist, but we were all so just gone in our heads and so absorbed in our problems or in somebody else's problems, depending on, what kind of mental illness or action you were dealing with. And it was very scary to be there. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was just a scary experience for a 14-year-old to be in that kind of place, and it was very traumatic. I'm not going to give kudos to the facility. I did not like the facility. I felt like the people there didn't care about me, and I don't think that was just a mental illness thing. I can look back on it now and being like, how were we accepting that kind of living conditions? It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. Which is another thing. It's not fun, guys. It's not romantic. It's not entertaining. You're not gonna, meet someone who's gonna change your life in a psychiatric ward. Depression isn't cute. Suicide is not, what's the word I'm looking for? Romantic. It's not even sad. It's devastating to yourself, to those around you, to the world, to the doctors and to the nurses who take care of you, to your goldfish. I don't even know. It's just horrible. There's just nothing about it there's no redeeming qualities. There's nothing about it to look at and go, oh, that's peaceful, or that would be a good way to go, or that would be a good solution. People always say it's a permanent solution, that's why it's bad. But even if I guess you can look at it that way and say, oh, it's a permanent solution, it's a good solution. No, it's a horrible solution because it's permanent, because no solution should be permanent. My solution to my eating disorder, was recovery and going through those treatments, but those treatments weren't permanent either. I had to constantly evolve and, change the route and get better. And it has made me thrive. No solution that is permanent is ever a good solution, obviously, but I mean, unless it's like cancer, which I guess is a different story. But even then, your treatment constantly changes. You see what I'm saying? There's no such thing as a permanent solution that will actually be sustainable. And obviously, suicide as a permanent solution is not sustainable because it doesn't fix your problems. It doesn't do anything for you. I mean, it's giving up at the end of the day, and you just can't do that. You can't. Don't do that to yourself. You deserve better. Your goldfish deserves better. And when I was in that place, it really made me realize, like, oh shit, like this cannot go on. I cannot keep being like this. I don't want to be in this place ever again. I don't want to deal with this ever again. I don't want to have to return here. I want to go out there and live my life. I don't want to be in the confines of these walls. I don't want to be constantly supervised. I want to be free. And some people say that, you know, so especially some people in facilities like that would say that, you know, suicide is freedom, and it's not. It's basically a permanent cell, because you have no autonomy. You have no freedom when you are gone. You have nothing when you're gone. Even if you're a religious person, you just have nothing when you're gone. Nothing like that you could possibly fathom right now. There is no peace in suicide. There is absolutely none. There is no freedom, there is no joy, there is no romance. There is no beautiful ending that way. There is no such thing as something like that when it comes to suicide. The only solution you have for peace and freedom is to get help. That is the only way you will ever find any peace. And with that hard truth, and with that ramble, because I wasn't planning on going on that ramble, but I did, so I don't really know how well that came out, but hopefully it made some sort of coherent sense. So after I left that facility, I returned back to the residential facility I was at and really put effort into more, you know, following the rules that they had set and really trying to reach those milestones. Like, I cared about it as much as they did, which I realized I hadn't cared about as much as they did. My only goal was getting out. My goal was never recovery for a long time. It was, oh, I want to get off the feeding tube. Oh, I want to get off bed rest. Oh, I want to be able to go outside, because I was in such a bad physical condition that was not allowed. So, you know, I was kind of just going, you know, working towards it. And when I realized, like, oh, well, all of these things were towards me getting home, I got so wrapped up in the idea that I forgot going home doesn't mean recovery. Going home doesn't mean you're healed. I could go home anytime I wanted to if I had been an adult. I saw people do it at the facility. That didn't mean that they were healed. The majority of them who went home before they were released by the facility themselves ended up actually coming back in the time that I was there, in a couple like weeks or even a couple days. Or I don't know what happened to them, but probably nothing good, to be honest. So I realized, you know, when I got back, all of that I just said, I realized that, and really put stock into, like, I'll go home when it is time. And I really worked towards sort of getting to that place of, I'm ready to go home. It doesn't matter if I wanted to, it mattered if I was ready. So I tried really hard, and eventually I got to go home. And it was a rocky road, and I did outpatient and I did therapy, and I'm still, you know, seeing a psychiatrist to this day. It's a never-ending journey, but it's better than having no journey at all. It's more beautiful, it's more fun. It's a lot more fun. There's a lot more things to do and a lot more things to see when you're on a never-ending journey, and you will always have something to look forward to, you know? So keep going on your journey, do it for your goldfish, and that's really all I have to say. So thank you guys for watching and or listening, and as a reminder, I'll say this one more time: if you need help, call 988, which is the National Suicide Hotline for the United States, and if you're in immediate danger, call 911. And if you guys want to share your story, which I hope this has encouraged you to, go ahead and go to www.thecalmblog.com and reach out to me, and reach out to, there's a form that you can use to reach out, and a media release that you'll have to sign, but it's really not that hard of a process, and I'd really like you to tell your story. So with that, that's all I have to say. Bye, guys.